Daf Yomi, Tractate Chullin, page 28b, top of the page, with the words Nishchate, Hadar Nibdeke. Nishchate v'hadar nibdeke, Dilba b'makom nakav kashachet. Nibdeke, Hadar nishchate, Ha'amar Rabba, Veshet ein lo bedika, Mibachutz el b'pnim. If one suggests, let us slaughter it, and then we will examine it to determine whether its windpipe was severed or its gullet was perforated, that is difficult, because perhaps the slaughterer will slaughter the duck precisely in the place of the perforation, and it will be impossible to determine whether the gullet was perforated before the slaughter. If one suggests, let us slice open the hide and examine the simanim, and then we will slaughter it, that is difficult, because didn't Rabbah say the gullet has no possible examination from without, as its outer side is red, and a small perforation would be indiscernible, but only from within, as its inner side is white, and blood at the site of the perforation would be discerned? Amar le Rav Yosef berei nivdekei lekane v'nishchetei lekane v'lachsherei v'adar Lafchave, Laveshit Vilibdeke, Amrabe Hakim Yosef Beri Betrefos, Kerab Yochanan. Alma Echad Amar O Hai. Rav Yosef, son of Rava, said to him, let us examine the windpipe, as it is possible to discern from without whether the majority of the windpipe was severed, and then cut the duck's windpipe, and thereby render it permitted, as cutting either of the two simanim suffices in a bird. And then let us turn the gullet inside out and examine its inner side to determine whether it was perforated and the duck is a treifa. Rava said, my son Yosef is as wise in the halachot of treifot as Rabbi Yochanan. Apparently one siman which is taught in the Mishnah as being sufficient in the slaughter of a bird means either this siman, the gullet, or that siman, the windpipe. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Ad shishchot Amar Rav Chizda, Lo Amar Rabbi Yehuda El Ba'ov, Hoil v'tzoleihu kulo ke'echad, Aval behema kevan dimanatche ever lo tzarich. The Mishnah states, Rabbi Yehuda says, the slaughter is not valid until he cuts the veins in the neck. Rav Chizda said, Rabbi Yehuda said that one must cut the veins only in the slaughter of a bird, as one typically roasts it in its entirety as one whole entity. Therefore, one must cut the veins to ensure that the blood drains. But with regard to the slaughter of an animal, since it is typically quartered into limbs, resulting in the blood draining more readily, one need not cut the veins. Lememra l'tamad Rabbi Yehuda mishum damhu v'atanan Rabbi Yehuda Omer ad shishchot esaveridin. The Gemara asks, is that to say that the reason that Rabbi Yehuda requires cutting of the veins is due to the need to drain the blood But didn't we learn in the Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda says, the slaughter is not valid until he cuts the veins, indicating that the cutting of the veins is a component of the slaughter. Ema ad shina keves haveridin umay ad sheyishchot ad shinkov b'shas shchito. The Gemara answers say that Rabbi Yehuda's statement is until he punctures the veins. And what is the meaning of until he cuts? Until he punctures the veins at the moment of slaughter when the blood flows. Tashima avridin b'shchita devrei Rabbi Yehuda. Em avridin tzorach l'nakbon b'shas shchita devrei Rabbi Yehuda. The Gemara suggests, coming here, a proof rejecting this interpretation of Yehuda's statement from Braita, the veins through slaughter. This is the statement of Rabbi Yehuda, which indicates that the cutting of the veins is a component of slaughter. The Gemara rejects that proof, saying that the correct reading of the Braita is he must puncture the veins at the moment of slaughter. This is the statement of Rabbi Yehuda. Tashma amru lo Rabbi Yehuda me'achar shelo huzkuru v'ridin elo hoisim mehen dam mali b'shchita mali shelo b'shchita miklal de Rabbi Yehuda savar b'shchita. The Gemara suggests, coming here, another proof from the Braita. The rabbi said to Rabbi Yehuda, since veins were mentioned only to drain blood from them, what difference is there to me whether one cuts them as a component of slaughter, and what difference is there to me whether one cuts them not as a component of slaughter? One can learn by inference from this Braita that Rabbi Yehuda holds that one cuts the vein as a component of slaughter. Mali l'nakun b'shas shchita, mali l'nakun shloi b'shas shchita, v'asavar b'shas shchita aseh dam d'chayim shelo b'shas shchita lo aseh dam d'karer. The Gemara rejects this proof. Well, this is what the rabbis are saying to Rabbi Yehuda. What difference is there to me whether one punctures them at the moment of slaughter, and what difference is there to me whether one punctures them not at the moment of slaughter? One can puncture the veins after the slaughter. And Rabbi Yehuda holds that at the time of slaughter the blood emerges from the body quickly because the blood is warm. When it is not, at the time of slaughter the blood does not emerge from the body because it is cool. Quickly because it's cool. It does not emerge from the body quickly because it's cool. Boy Daf Yomi V'ridin Rabbi Yehuda shahabahen dras bahen mahu. Rabbi Yirmiyah raises a dilemma in cutting the veins according to Rabbi Yehuda if one interrupted the act in the midst of cutting them, or if he pressed the knife and cut them instead of drawing the knife back and forth. What is the halacha to these actions, which invalidate slaughter when cutting the simanim, also invalidate slaughter when performed in the cutting of the veins? Amar lei hahu sabam hachi amar Rabbi Elazar v'amri lei amar lei hahu sabam Rabbi Elazar hachi amar Rabbi Yochanan. A certain elder said to him, this is what Rabbi Elazar said, and some say that a certain elder said to Rabbi Elazar, this is what Rabbi Yochanan said, he punctures the vein with a thorn, and their cutting is valid. Cutting the veins is not a component of the slaughter. Taniko said, Simanim v'oif pasul vein sarach lomar v'behem Rabbi Yehuda omer, the Gemara notes that this is taught in the Braita and according to the opinion of Chisda, that Rabbi Yehuda requires cutting of the veins only in the slaughter of birds and not only in the slaughter of animals. If one cuts two halves, one half of each of the simanim in a bird, the slaughter is not valid, and needless to say that the slaughter performed in that matter is not valid in the case of an animal. Rabbi Yehuda says, in a bird, the slaughter is not valid until he cuts the gullet and the veins. Rav Amar Mechzer Mechzer Kov. Rav Kahana Amar Mechzer Mechzer Kov. The Mishnah teaches, if one cut half of one simon in a bird and one half a siman in an animal, the slaughter is not valid. It was stated that there is an Amoraic dispute. Rav said the halachic status of a siman of which precisely half was cut and half remained uncut is like that of a siman of which the majority was cut. Rav Kahana said the halachic status of a siman of which precisely half was cut and half remained uncut is not like that of a siman of which the majority was cut. Rav Amar mechzal mechza karov haki amar le rachman le Moshe lo tishayer ruba. Rav Kahana Amar mechza ina karov haki amar le rachman le Moshe shchait ruba. They're arguing what God told Moshe. He didn't say both things. Well, someone's not telling the truth here. The Gemara elaborates. Rav said the halachic status of a siman of which precisely half was cut and half remained uncut is like that of the siman of which the majority was cut. And this is what the merciful one said to Moses: do not leave the majority uncut. When cutting precisely half, the majority does not remain uncut. Rav Kahana said the halachic status of a siman of which precisely half was cut and half remained uncut is not like that of a siman of which majority was cut. This is what the merciful one said to Moses: cut the majority of the siman. Therefore, cutting precisely half is insufficient. You can't cut it precisely in half. It's not. You can't always be exact. But anyway, okay. Do not leave the majority uncut. So if you cut half of it, the majority of it is not uncut. Simen Chatzi Katina Gargeres Begima. The Gemara provides a mnemonic for the proofs that it cites with regard to this dispute: half, Katina, windpipe, deficiency. Tanan Chatzi Echad Boy Vechad Vechatzi Bebehem Ashkiras Psula Yamrit Mechsal Mechsakrov Amai Pasula Vilero Vidarabanan Din Meloasil Bevad Palgam. We learned in the Mishnah if one cut half of one siman in a bird and or 1.5 siman in an animal, his slaughter is not valid. The Gemara questions the opinion of Rav. If you say that the halachic status of a siman of which precisely half was cut and half remained uncut is like that of a siman of which the majority was cut, why is his slaughter not valid? By cutting half, didn't he perform the cutting of a majority of the siman? The Gemara rejects that proof. By rabbinic law, the slaughter is not valid due to the concern that perhaps he will not come to perform cutting on even half of the siman. Amar Rav Katina Toshima Chalakol Ishnayim Hen Shavin Shneim Tmein Lefi She'eh Efshar Litzamtzem. Rav Katina said, come and hear our proofs contrary to Rav's opinion from a brayta with regard to an impure earthenware vessel that is purified through being broken. If it is broken in two, the larger portion remains impure and the smaller portion is purified. If he divided it into two and they are seemingly equal halves, both are impure because it is impossible to measure precisely in breaking an earthenware vessel and render both halves equal. Since it is impossible to determine which half is larger, both remain impure due to uncertainty. The Gemara infers, but were it possible to measure precisely and divide it into equal halves, both would be pure. As if Rav states the halachic status of half is like that of majority, why are they pure? Go here to one half of the vessel and you will see that there is a majority and it should remain impure. Go there with the other half and you will see that there's a majority and it should remain impure. Amar Rav Papa Rav Papa said, in rejecting that proof, there are not two majorities in one vessel. Therefore, one cannot consider the halachic status of half like that of majority. By contrast, with regard to cutting the windpipe or the gullet, the halachic status of precisely half can be like that of majority, as there is no other majority contradicting that status. Tashima Shachal Chazi Gagedes Shaba. The Gemara suggests, coming here, another proof contrary to Rav's opinion from the brayta. If one cut half the windpipe and interrupted the slaughter,